Hi, my name is Kiranjeet Kaur, and I am the RCIC. What's your full name?
My full name is Maria Lopez.
What is your date of birth?
May 5th, 1979.
Okay. What city were you born in?
I was born in San Salvador.
Okay. And what country were you born in?
I was born in El Salvador.
Okay. Do you have any other citizenship?
No, only from El Salvador.
Okay. Do you have permanent residence in another country?
No, I don't have any permanent residence in any other country.
Okay. When did you meet Carlos Lopez?
I met Carlos Lopez in 1999.
And when did you start dating?
We started dating in the same year of 1999.
Okay. And when did you get married?
We got married in 2005.
How many children do you have?
I have three children.
And what's the name and date of birth of your children?
My firstborn, Gustavo Lopez, was born on August 8, 2000. Lucia Lopez was born December 6, 2008. And my youngest, Rosa Lopez, was born March 3rd, 2019.
Okay, and you mentioned your son Gustavo was born in 2000. Did you start living with Carlos before your son was born?
Yes, we started living together after our son Gustavo was born.
Okay. Is Carlos the father of all your children?
No, he is the father of my first two, Gustavo and Lucia. Miguel is the father of my youngest daughter, Rosa.
Okay. When did your husband go to Uruguay to work?
Carlos went to Uruguay in 2005.
Okay. And how long did your husband stay in Uruguay when he was, how long did your husband stay in El Salvador when he was coming to visit?
So he will come for about like 3 weeks, and he will come every 6 months or so.
Okay. While he was working in Uruguay, did he send you money for the children?
Yes, in the beginning, he will send us money. But
Okay.
then around 2017, he stopped supporting us financially.
Okay. And what did you do for a living in El Salvador?
I work as a seamstress.
Okay. Did you visit your husband in Uruguay?
Yes, I did.
Okay. How many times?
There were often times that I visit him.
And how long did you stay?
I stayed a couple of months during the summer vacation.
Okay. And what was your husband's immigration status in Uruguay?
He was there on a work visa.
Okay. Did he get a work permit in Uruguay?
Yes, he had a temporary work permit.
Did he get permanent residence in Uruguay?
No, he did not.
Okay. When did the verbal abuse start?
The verbal abuse started around 2014, 2015.
Did you talk to any family member about the verbal abuse you experienced?
Yes, I talked to my sister, Emily Garcia.
Okay, and when did the physical abuse start?
The physical abuse started in 2015 and it escalated in 2017 when he came to El Salvador unannounced.
Okay, did you report the physical abuse to the police?
Yes, we called the local police several times, but they were not responsive or they didn't do anything. Each time we called the police, I was also a bit worried because I knew it was not going to be anything, and in fact, just inflame the situation. In El Salvador, the police don't do much to protect the woman experiencing domestic violence.
Okay, and when did you report to the police?
I reported in December 2017.
And how many times?
I reported that news about 3 times.
And who made the report to the police?
My son Gustavo called the police, and I also did it myself.
Okay. And did you tell any family member of the physical abuse you experienced in the hands of your husband?
Yes, I did. I told my sister Emily Garcia.
Okay. And did you sustain any injuries? What type of injuries? Did you go to the hospital or clinic?
Yes, when I was being abused, I got bruises and cuts on my arms and face. I will normally do the first aid on my own.
And how did you find out that your husband was being unfaithful?
Because Carlos posted a picture of a woman on his Facebook.
And did you confront him about his affairs?
Yes, I did a couple of times.
Did you try to leave him?
Yes, I did try to leave him, but he threatened me and my children, making it difficult for me to leave.
Okay. And how did you meet Miguel?
When Carlos stopped making financial contributions, Miguel used to call me to see how I was doing, and then he was also helping us.
Okay. And when did you start your relationship with Miguel?
I started my relationship with Miguel in early 2018.
And when was the last time you spoke with Miguel?
The last time I spoke with him was in October 2018, before I left for Canada.
Okay. And when was the last time you tried to contact Miguel and how?
Well, he disappeared and I never hear from him after I left El Salvador.
And when did you apply for your visa to Canada?
I applied for my visa on September 12th, 2015, and I got 5 years visitor's visa.
Okay. And did you apply for a visa for your children?
No, I did not apply for them.
And what was the purpose of you applying for a Canadian visa?
To visit my husband's uncle in Toronto.
And when was your visa approved?
It was issued in December 27, 2015.
And when did you book your ticket to travel to Canada?
I booked it late September 2018.
Okay. And what was the purpose of your trip to Canada this time?
So the initial plan was for me to come and deliver my baby in Canada.
And why did your children not travel with you?
Because they didn't have a visa at the time and my visit was urgent. Also, I was planning to come back to El Salvador after my baby was born.
Okay. And where did you stay when you arrived in Canada?
I stayed with my friend Karina.
And when was your daughter Rosa born?
She was born on March 3rd, 2019.
And what was the plan after your daughter Rosa was born?
My plan was to go back to El Salvador, but Carlos found about the baby.
And how did he find out about the baby?
Because the hospital where I gave birth mailed birth records to my address in El Salvador.
Okay. And why did you not make a claim for protection when you arrived in Canada in October 2018?
My initial plan was to have the baby and then go back to El Salvador. Also, I was unaware about the refugee system in Canada.
Okay. And what was your current status in Canada?
I was on a visitor's visa.
Okay. And did you extend your stay as a visitor?
Yes, I did apply for an extension in March 2019.
Okay. And what is going to happen if you return to El Salvador?
My husband Carlos will find me and will kill me and my newborn daughter.
Can you live in another part of El Salvador, for instance, in San Salvador?
No, because it's a small country and wherever I go, he will find me.
And would you be able to find employment in El Salvador?
No, it will be difficult because my work as a seamstress, I will do it through social media, and how that's how my husband will find me.
Okay. And how would Carlos be able to locate you if you relocate?
Because El Salvador is a small country and he has contacts within the police.
Okay. And would you be able to find housing in another part of El Salvador?
No, because it's hard to find housing for a single mother in San Salvador.
Okay. And do you have any family members in El Salvador?
Yes, I do have family members, my sister.
Okay. And why would Carlos be interested in finding you?
Because Carlos is a very jealous man, and now that he knows that I have a child from another man, his cousin Miguel, he will kill me and my baby daughter.
And were you able to get protection from the police in El Salvador?
No, police don't do much for domestic violence. Also, Carlos has contacts in the police.
Are your children in danger in El Salvador?
Yes, my son and my daughter are not safe there as Carlos abuses my children, and he made my daughter work for his new girlfriend, and my son is always scared of him.
And when was the last time Carlos threatened you?
The last time was on April 28, 2019.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Member. Mrs. Carla Lopez is seeking refugee protection under Sections 96 and 97 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. The claimant is a survivor of domestic violence at the hands of her ex-husband, Carlos Lopez. After enduring years of abuse, she fled El Salvador, fearing for her safety, since she found solace with Miguel, who is Mr. Carlos Lopez's cousin, and offered support when she needed the most. They started a romantic relationship, and then she got pregnant, and fearing for the violent reaction of her ex-husband, Mrs. Lopez decided to come to Canada to give birth. After the birth of her daughter, Rosa, on March 3rd, 2019, her husband has discovered her whereabouts and has resumed his threats against her. She fears for her life and the life and safety for her child should she be forced to return to El Salvador. The claimant was subjected to prolonged physical, emotional, and psychological abuse by her ex-husband. She sought protection from local authorities multiple times, but the response was inadequate due to systemic failures in addressing gender-based violence. Her abuser remained at large, and impunity for such crimes is well documented in El Salvador. After she became pregnant by another man, she realized that if her husband found out about the pregnancy, this will put her life and her unborn child at even greater risk. She came to Canada and gave birth to her daughter Rosa here. Upon learning of the birth, her ex-husband intensified his threats against her, making it clear that she will not be safe anywhere in El Salvador. The claimant acknowledged the delay in filing her refugee claim and submits that when the death threats intensified as her ex-husband discovered that she has given birth in Canada, he threatened her to kill her and her child. Despite this delay, she has constantly feared from her safety and that of her child. The threats from her ex-husband, combined with well-documented country conditions, demonstrate that her fear remains well-founded and ongoing as reflected in the Immigration and Refugee Board's chairperson's guideline for women refugee claimants fearing gender-related persecution. Also, there is a relevant case from the Refugee Appeal Division into that extent. The file is TB 816643. Madam Member, the claimant meets the definition of a conventional refugee under Section 96 of the IRPA, as she faces persecution based on her gender as a woman who fled domestic violence. Alternatively, she is a person in need of protection under Section 97, as she will face arrest to her life or cruel and inhumane treatment if returned to El Salvador. Persecution based on gender and domestic violence under Section 96, women fleeing domestic violence are recognized as a member of a particular social group. Mrs. Carla Lopez experiences and the ongoing threats from her husband demonstrate a clear and sustained pattern of gender-based persecution. El Salvador the El Salvador government has been ineffective in protecting women from domestic violence. Then the second part, the risk to life and inhuman treatment, Section 97. In return, Mrs. Lopez faces an imminent and serious threat from her ex-husband, a man with a history of violent behavior who has explicitly vowed to harm her and her child. The culture of impunity, lack of effective police protection, and systemic failures in addressing gender-based violence in El Salvador put the claimant at a heightened risk of femicide. The risks she faces are not generalized both personal and direct, as evidence the continued threats from her ex-husband. El Salvador has one of the highest rates of femicide in the world. Reports from human rights organizations confirm that women in abusive relationships receive little to no state protection. The country's legal system often fails to hold perpetrators accountable, and victims of domestic violence frequently find themselves with no recourse. Mrs. Lopez has already experienced this firsthand, and she has every reason to believe that returning to El Salvador will place her in immediate danger. I would like to bring the attention of the Madam Member that the National Documentation Package on El Salvador, Item 5.3, Convention of Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, states that gender inequality and discrimination constitute a challenge to human development in El Salvador. The effects of coronavirus disease COVID-19 emergency have heightened the risk affecting women's lives. It is therefore essential to promote concerted action by state institutions in order to uphold women's human rights. In item 5.4, gender violence, the country profile El Salvador as well states that the country has struggled with high levels of crime, poverty, and inequality, which have hindered his economic and social development. As well, in 5.5, the document Left in the Dark, Violence Against Women and LGBTI Persons in Honduras and Salvador, item 5.7, El Salvador Compliance with Internal Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Gender-Based Violence, Gang Violence, Trafficking, and Police Corruption also states that despite the implementation of certain legislative and societal reforms, violence against women remains a severe problem in El Salvador. Gender-based violence includes domestic violence, sexual assault, and even femicide. Moreover, law enforcement in El Salvador consistently fails to adequately protect women victims of violence, in part due to police corruption. As well, it is submitted in item 5.10 with the item Gender-Based Violence Impunity Regional Study, El Salvador Case Study, as well as 5.11 underreported and unpunished femicides in El Salvador continue. Mrs. Lopez has exhausted all reasonable avenues for protection in El Salvador. Her attempts to seek help from authorities were unsuccessful, and systemic gender-based violence remains a pervasive issue. Given her ex-husband's influence and ability to track her down, there is no viable internal flight alternative from her within El Salvador. She cannot safely relocate within the country and will remain at risk no matter where she goes. As noted in the NDP 2.1, El Salvador Country Reports on Human Rights Practices for 2023, it states that violence against women, including domestic violence, remain a widespread and serious problem. The law prohibited domestic violence and generally provided for sentences ranging from 1 to 3 years in prison, although some forms of domestic violence carried higher penalties. The law also permitted restraining orders against offender. The law against domestic violence was poorly enforced. The domestic NGO Feminist Network Against Violence Against Women analyzed cases of violence reported in the first half of 2021 and found the conviction rate was 6%. They attributed the low conviction rate to fear of aggressors, normalization of violence, a lack of understanding regarding survivors' rights, impunity, and overall a patriarchal system. In the NDP item 2.6, the compilation on El Salvador, the Human Rights Committee was concerned about the low number of persecutions and convictions for feminicide and the high rates of domestic and sexual violence against women and girls, including the sexual exploitation by gangs and the fact that rapes were not actually reported. As well, in the NDP 5.2, domestic violence, including legislation, state protection, and support services. Again, states that sources report that domestic violence in El Salvador is a serious problem. In conclusion, Madam Member, Mrs. Lopez has provided a consistent and credible testimony regarding her past persecution and the ongoing threats she faces. The country conditions in El Salvador confirm that women in her situation face extreme risk, and the state is unable or unwilling to provide adequate protection. For these reasons, I respectfully submit that the claimant meets the definition of a conventional refugee under Section 96, or in the alternative, is a person in need of protection under Section 97. I urge the panel to grant her claim for refugee protection.